Hello, fourth graders. We are going to now move to the waters of New York State for social studies. And I love this beginning map because it shows all the different bodies of water that are within and surrounding New York State. So you can see some of the natural borders, right? Like Lake Ontario and Lake Erie and Lake Champlain. You can see the longest river in New York, which is the Hudson River, and all kinds of, you can see those Finger Lakes in central New York. So it's very cool how you can see lots of different bodies of water that are in New York State. So I want you to have your Waters of New York social studies packet out, so that, and a pencil, so that way you can follow along and fill out your guided notes while we do this first section. So we're going to be talking about the Hudson River first. So the Hudson Highway. The Hudson River is the longest river in New York State. It is 300 miles long. Now remember, it's the longest river in New York State. Lots of kids will want to make the mistake of saying it's the longest river anywhere, and it's not. It's just in New York State, the Hudson River is the longest river within our state, within the state that we live in, New York State. So the Hudson River is, so you're going to write longest river in New York State. Please make sure you capitalize the N in New, the Y in York, and the S in State, because those are proper nouns. It's the name of the state we live in. And then you're going to write 300, because it is 300 miles long. It is like a very old highway. The Hudson River is one of the transportation routes that people have used for thousands of years. So that's why it's called the Hudson Highway, because it's like a very old highway. It's how people would travel. So when they talk about transportation, people would travel on it. They would also transport goods, like things that they wanted to trade. So like pelts from animals, or food, or wood, or all kinds of different things that they wanted to trade. They would use the river as their form of transportation. Number one, it was faster, and number two, it was easier to move goods and things along a lot faster than trying to go across the land by either walking or riding a horse, or eventually they did have buggies that they would pull, but it still wasn't as quick and as efficient as using the river. So the river was a great way to transport or to move goods and services from one location to another. So a very old highway, and then transportation routes that people have used for thousands of years. Next page. It is deep enough for big ships to sail on it. And we did talk about this once before. The big ships can sail all the way from Hudson Bay, or from New York Bay, or the Atlantic Ocean, up to Albany. They can't go any further than Albany, but that's a pretty long distance that big ships can sail on. That's pretty good that they can sail all the way from, they can go from the Atlantic Ocean through New York Bay and all the way up to Albany. So it is deep enough for big ships to sail on it. Transportation means moving goods or people from one place to another. So there's that vocabulary word, transportation, and it means moving goods or people from one place to another. So after you wrote big ships to sail on it for the first bulleted point, then you're going to write transportation on the next bulleted point. And it means moving goods or people from one place to another. Native Americans used this route to transport goods to trade with one another. So just like I was talking about how they would trade furs, and they would trade food, different food that they have, all kinds of different things that they would trade along the route, the Hudson River route, the Hudson Highway. So transport goods to trade with one another. Now, if I go a little too fast, you can always pause the video so that way you can get what you need written down and then resume the video to keep, so that way you can stay with me. So now we're going to talk about what the source is. The source of a river is the beginning of a river. So any river has a source, which is the beginning and an ending. So for the Hudson River, the source of the Hudson River is high in the Adirondacks in a place called Indian Pass. And you can see here, this is an actual picture. You can see the sign right here, source of Hudson River. You can see right here, this is where the Hudson River begins. So this is the source. So the source is where a river, every river has a source. Every river has a beginning. And the Hudson River's source is at Indian Pass. Please make sure you capitalize the I in Indian and the P in Pass, because again, it is a proper noun. It is the name of an actual place. As the Hudson River travels south, it grows wider and deeper. So as the Hudson River travels south, it grows wider and deeper, which makes sense, right? Look how narrow, and it isn't very deep up here. But then remember, I talked about how from Albany south, ships can travel. So that makes sense that as the Hudson River travels south, it grows wider and deeper. So it starts, the beginning, at Indian Pass, and then it starts to travel south. So as it travels south, it grows wider and deeper. So you can see here is where the source is, where my pointer is circling. Way up here is the source of the Hudson River. There are smaller rivers and streams called tributaries flowing into it. So smaller rivers and streams that flow into larger rivers are called tributaries. This is the name of, this is what those smaller rivers are called. Anytime a smaller river flows into a bigger river, it's called a tributary. And we can see one tributary right here, and that's the Mohawk River. And the Mohawk River is the largest tributary of the Hudson River. So it's the largest river that flows into the Hudson River. So it's a tributary. See, it starts, its source is here, and it flows into the Hudson River. Flows into the Hudson River. Okay? So that's what a tributary is. It's a smaller river or stream that flows into a larger river. And the largest tributary of the Hudson River is the Mohawk River. And again, please capitalize the M in Mohawk and the R in river, because it's a proper noun. It's the actual name of a river, proper noun. And our last page we're going to do today before we get to our video. After the Mohawk River joins the Hudson becomes deep enough to allow large ships to navigate it. So I'm just going to go back just for 1 second, and I will come back to this so you can write this down. But you can see here, oh no, sorry, it's making me go the wrong. You can see here, this is where Albany is, where my pointer is. This is where, because the Mohawk River flows into the Hudson River, this is where a bunch of water is coming into the Hudson River. So it helps to make this deeper and wider, and more water is flowing into the river. So right here is Albany. So right from where the Mohawk River joins the Hudson River, that's pretty much where the ships can go. And they can't go any further north. This is as far north as they can go. But as they can travel south, and the river gets deeper and wider. Right all the way in through here, it's at its deepest and widest. Okay, so let me go back. After the Mohawk River joins the Hudson becomes deep enough to allow large ships to navigate it. So again, the Mohawk River, capital M for Mohawk, capital R for river. So after the Mohawk River joins the Hudson, capital H for Hudson, the Hudson becomes deep enough to allow large ships, to navigate it. So that Mohawk River brings in a large rush of water, which helps to create a deeper, wider area right there at Albany. The mouth or end, so remember we talked about how the beginning of the river is called the source? Well, the mouth of the river is the end of the river. So the end of a river is called the mouth. The mouth or end of the Hudson River empties into the Atlantic Ocean near New York City. So you're going to capitalize the A in Atlantic and the O in ocean. And you also need to capitalize the N in new, the Y in York, and capitalize the C in city. Those are proper nouns. Those are names of places, the Atlantic Ocean and New York City. So the mouth is the end. The source was the beginning up at Indian Pass. The mouth is the end, which empties into the Atlantic Ocean near New York City. It actually empties into New York Bay, which then empties into the Atlantic Ocean. But it's right near New York City. And we do have a video we are going to watch. While you are watching the video, I would keep your packet open so you can write. I want you to write 2 important facts that you learned from the video, and then I'm going to have you type those facts into a form when you are done. So that way, number 1, I know that you're actually watching the video. And number 2, I think it's important to learn new things about, especially about things that are part of our very own state that we live in. And this is also a great way for me to get some feedback from you to see what you are finding important and what you are finding interesting in the video. So while you're watching this video, 2 important facts, please. Please, 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 2 important facts. I'll just take a second. It's coming. I promise. There we are. All right, so this is a captain. He drives the ships on the Hudson River. He does these cruises, and he has some great information to share with us about the Hudson River. Again, remember, you need 2 important facts that you learned after watching this video. So you can write them right on your packet, so that way you'll have them when you need to type them into your Google form. Of course, there's an ad. Oh, don't tell me.
Our current tour, visit cspan.org/cities tour. And we continue now with our look at the history of Hyde Park.
So we're out on the Hudson River today, and we're going to be showing you guys some of the local sights and sounds that you can enjoy while you're here in Hyde Park. Much of the river that you'll visit today was often referred to as Millionaire's Row because of the many mansions that are owned by rich families such as the Vanderbilts, the Astors, the Rockefellers, and the Roosevelts. Now, throughout its history, the Hudson has been used for both trade and travel. This river continues to serve as an important trading route. The Hudson River is a 315-mile-long river that begins in Lake Cheer of the Clouds in the Adirondack Mountains and ends in New York Harbor. At its widest point, the river is almost 3 miles wide, and at its deepest, it's nearly 200 feet deep. The Hudson River is one of America's national treasures, and it played an important part in the history and development of New York State. It is the principal river of New York and was an important highway of commerce. It's hard to remember in these days of superhighways and high-speed freight trains, but in the early 1800s, transportation was often a difficult task. Roads were primitive or non-existent, railroads hadn't been invented yet, and travelers and trade goods were often delayed by unfavorable winds and currents on the river. All this changed with the invention of the steamboat by Robert Fulton. On August 14th of 1807, Robert Fulton's steamboat, the Clermont, made its first successful voyage from New York to Albany and back again in 62 hours, a journey that would have taken over a week under sail. The steamboats revolutionized water travel by dramatically decreasing the amount of time required for both passengers and cargo to reach New York City markets. In those days, everything moved on the river: bricks, ice, coal, iron ore, hay, even the mail. Now, the opening of the Erie Canal in 1825, followed by the D&H Canal in 1828, contributed enormously to the flow of people using this river for both travel and for commerce. and it also changed the economies of towns along its banks. Stretching from Albany to Buffalo, the Erie Canal joined the Hudson to the Great Lakes, creating a sea passage from the East Coast to the Midwest. This also turned New York Harbor into America's #1 port. By 1850, there were approximately 100 steamboats on the river, carrying over 1 million passengers a year.
So that's some great information about the Hudson River and how it was a highway for lots of goods and for people to travel on in New York State, and how it was an important part of the history of New York State. So again, remember those 2 facts I need you to add to that Google Forms, and then we will talk some more about our next river next time. Have a great day, guys. Bye.